I still remember the night Tessa stood in my kitchen in Port Hope, wearing one of my old Carhartt hoodies, with the sleeves pulled down over her hands, looking at me like she was about to say something she had been holding for months. Her voice came out smaller than I had ever heard it. "Nobody's going to want this," she said. "Not me. This." Like she had already separated herself from her own body and was presenting the evidence. That sentence did something to me I am still not entirely sure how to explain. Not because it was tragic, though it was, but because Tessa Burrows had never once in her entire adult life said anything that asked for pity. She was the woman who called out her own mother in a crowded Thanksgiving table for passive-aggressive commentary, and then passed the gravy like nothing had happened. She had driven 4 hours alone through a January blizzard on the 401 to get to a work presentation, finished it, got back in the car, and only called me from a Tim Hortons parking lot in Belleville to say the roads were a bit sketchy. So when she said it, I knew she wasn't performing. She believed, but it started before that. It started 6 weeks earlier, when my younger brother Finn called me on a Sunday morning while I was refinishing the deck behind my place in Cobourg. "Don't make it weird," he said, which is never how you want a phone call to begin. I set down the brush. "Good morning, I'm serious, Cal." Finn only used my name like that when he was about to hand me something he did not want to be responsible for. I pulled off one work glove. "What happened?" "Tessa's back. She's staying at her mom's place on Walton Street." I sat down on the step. I had known Tessa Burrows for 11 years. She had been Finn's girlfriend briefly, then just his friend. Then somehow, over time, she had become my friend too. The kind of friendship that builds itself without you noticing. Until one day you realize this person knows things about you that your family doesn't. She used to show up at hockey games with terrible coffee and strong opinions about officiating. She had once told me my apartment in Toronto had the energy of a man who had given up and bought a cactus to confirm it. She argued about hockey trades with enough confidence that grown men second-guessed themselves. And she stole the last slice of pizza at every gathering we ever had together, without a single apology. Then she moved to Vancouver, got a senior role at a tech firm, got engaged to a guy named Colby, who had the right LinkedIn profile and the wrong instincts, and became the version of herself that people described as driven and settled and building something real out there. Finn got quiet on the phone. "She had surgery," he said, "the serious kind." I looked out at the lake. It was October, flat and gray. "Colby's gone." I did not ask right away. I knew what kind of gone he meant because there is only one kind of gone that comes right after the serious kind of surgery. Finn filled in the rest carefully. She didn't want a lot of questions. She didn't want people showing up with casseroles and that particular look. The one that was half concern and half relief that it wasn't them. Her mom had already cried at the Loblaws on Division Street, which Tessa had somehow found out about, and now everyone was pretending the Loblaws had never happened. I told him I wasn't going to ambush her in the driveway. He said he knew, but that my face sometimes communicated things my mouth was sensible enough not to. I couldn't argue with that. I saw Tessa 2 days later. She was standing outside her mother's house on Walton Street, next to a small stack of boxes and a rolling suitcase, looking at them the way you look at something you have to deal with, but keep finding reasons to delay. Her hair was shorter. She was wearing a loose quarter zip and dark joggers, and one hand rested against her side with the particular stillness of someone who had learned that posture by necessity. When she saw my truck, something moved across her face. Not quite a smile yet. More like recognition. "Did Finn send you?" she said. "Or did you come on your own so you could feel good about it later?" I got out and looked at the boxes. "Came on my own. Finn mentioned it and I figured you'd be out here trying to wheel your luggage up the stairs." I was about to ask a neighbor. "Mrs. Hendricks is 81. She looks strong." That was Tessa. Right there. Still quick, still sharp, still taking up exactly as much space as she wanted. For about 4 seconds, she looked like herself, the full version. Then a car slowed slightly on the street for no reason, and her shoulders changed. She turned her face toward the house. I pretended not to see it. That became the arrangement between us pretty fast. I noticed things and let them sit until she decided what to do with them. I carried boxes while she stood in the front hall and directed. "Not that one there. You're going to hit the baseboard." I said I wasn't going to hit the baseboard. She said the baseboard disagreed. I did not hit the baseboard. She mentioned nothing about this. Later I helped move a small bookshelf from the front room to the upstairs landing. She reached down for one end and I looked at her without meaning to communicate anything, but she froze anyway. Her jaw tightened. "I can lift a shelf," she said. "I know you can." "Then why are you doing the thing?" "What thing?" "The careful thing." I set my end down on the floor. "Because if you overdo it before you're supposed to, Finn is going to blame me and I will never hear the end of it." She looked at me for a second. Then she took the lighter end without saying anything else. That was her version of accepting help. The last thing she asked me to do was unstick a window in her old bedroom that had been painted shut sometime during the Harper government. I worked at the frame while she sat on the bed watching like a project manager reviewing a timeline. "You still do that thing with your jaw," she said. "What thing?" "When you're concentrating. You said it like you're trying to intimidate the window into compliance. Sometimes it works. The window is not afraid of you." The window opened, didn't it? She almost smiled. Almost. Over the next 3 weeks I found reasons to stop by. Finn had a list at first. Fix the back gate latch, look at the bathroom faucet that ran cold for 40 seconds before warming up, move the boxes Tessa described as light, but which contained what I am fairly certain were complete hardcover encyclopedia sets. Then Tessa started coming to my workshop in the detached garage behind my place. The first time she arrived with 2 coffees from the shop on King Street, and placed one on my workbench without ceremony. "The hinge on the kitchen cabinet is loose," she said. "It's been driving me insane for a week." I looked at the cabinet door she was holding under her arm. "Did you take that off yourself?" "It was already going." "You removed the screws first." "It was already going in that direction." I fixed it while she moved around the workshop, not touching anything, which with Tessa meant she was looking at everything very carefully. She circled the big mirror I was restoring for a client, then my workbench, then drifted to the far wall where I had hung some old pieces. She avoided every reflective surface with the practiced ease of someone who had made that choice. So many times it no longer felt like a choice. She still joked. She still called me out. She still borrowed my phone charger without asking, and left it plugged into the wall when she left. But there were other things. The loose sweaters even on the warmer days we got that late fall. The way she changed the subject when Vancouver came up. How she breathed differently, shorter, controlled. When someone asked in a kind voice how she was doing, because kindness had started to feel like a trap. So I did what I knew how to do. I showed up, I fixed small things. I did not make her talk about the big things. Window latch, gate hinge, the loose step on her mother's back porch that had been loose for 3 years. Manageable things, things with clear solutions. People were harder. Then one evening in mid-November I drove past her mother's place on my way back from a delivery out toward Grafton, and I saw Tessa sitting alone on the front porch. It was around 7, already dark and cold enough that she had a fleece blanket pulled around her shoulders. She had a mug in both hands and she was staring out at the street, with the particular stillness of someone who was not watching anything at all. The porch light was on behind her, but she sat just past it in the edge of the dark. I slowed down without deciding to. She saw me. She did not smile or wave or do the thing people do when they want you to stop. She just looked at me. That was enough. I almost kept going. Not because I didn't want to be there. Because Tessa had a particular expression when she was alone on purpose, and I had learned there was a real difference between giving someone space and just leaving them inside it. I parked at the curb and got out. "You're lost," she said from the porch. "Grafton delivery. This is the long way back, by about 12 kilometers. I needed the drive." She looked at my empty hands. "You didn't bring anything." "I wasn't planning this terrible service." I went back to the truck, found a box of those Stouffer's ginger snaps I keep in the glove box for long drives and a thermos of coffee that was still mostly warm. When I came back up the steps, she raised one eyebrow. "I run a full-service operation," I said. She took the thermos and looked at it. "Is this Tim's? Homebrew. You're going to have to do better than this. You're sitting on a porch in November holding a mug. You don't get to be selective." That got a small exhale out of her. Not a laugh exactly, but close enough that something in my chest settled. I sat on the porch railing, close enough to stay, far enough that she could tell me to leave without it being a whole thing. She poured coffee into the thermos lid. The street was quiet. One of those November nights in a small Ontario town, where the cold has finally convinced everyone to stay inside, and there's just the sound of wind in the maples, and the occasional car turning onto Division. For a few minutes, neither of us said anything. That was something I had always appreciated about Tessa even now. She could carry a conversation through a wall, but she also knew when to let things sit. It was trust, the sitting in silence kind. Eventually she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure, you have to promise to answer honestly." "Not kindly. Honestly. Those aren't always different things. With you they are. You're polite by default." "Fine." She turned her mug between her palms. Her knuckles were dry from the cold. She looked at them. "When you look at me now, what do you see?" I did not answer right away because the easy answers were sitting right there, and I knew better than to reach for them. It would have been simple to say she looked fine. She looked like herself. She looked good. All technically arguable, all essentially useless. Because Tessa was not asking about her haircut or whether she seemed tired. She was asking whether everything that had happened, the surgery, Colby, the year, had moved to the front of her face like a placard she couldn't take down. Whether that was the first thing now. Whether that was the whole thing now. I breathed out slowly. I see Tessa, I said, her mouth thinned. That's the kind answer. I'm not done. She went still. I see the woman who came back to Port Hope after the worst year of her life, and used her second day here to lecture me about the structural integrity of my deck. I see someone who brought me coffee to fix a hinge she had absolutely already tried to fix herself. I see someone who is working very hard to make sure nobody in her vicinity is uncomfortable, and who gets angry when people try to be gentle with her, because gentle feels like being looked at instead of seen. She was quiet for a moment. I see that you're tired, I said. I see that you're hurt. I see that you're different from the woman who used to argue the merits of zone coverage and overtime with complete strangers at the Memorial Center. My position on that was correct. I know it was. I looked out at the street, then back at her. But that's not the first thing I see. It's not the main thing. Her face changed. Not dramatically. Tessa did not do dramatic in the way that announced itself. She just looked down at the mug quickly, like I had said something she was not ready to receive. After a moment she said quietly, Colby did. I had heard his name maybe 4 times since she'd come home. Always by accident, always followed by the quickest possible subject change. I kept still. He was great at first, she said. Really great. The kind of great that's easy when everything is still going to plan. Her voice was flat, controlled. He came to every appointment. He talked to the doctors. He said the right things to my mom. He held my hand in waiting rooms and sent updates to my friends so I wouldn't have to. I thought that was what it was going to be like. She looked down. Recovery wasn't like that. It was slow and it was ugly in the real way, not the movie way. I was uncomfortable and scared and I didn't want people around, but I also couldn't stand being alone. I wasn't easy to be with. I know that. I said nothing. He started being busy, she continued. Not obviously, just gradually. He'd take calls in the other room. Errands started taking longer. He stopped sitting on my side of the couch, stopped reaching for my hand unless I reached first. And when I asked him about it, he said I was reading too much into things, that I was tired and stressed and not seeing clearly. My jaw tightened. She caught it. Don't do that, she said. Don't get angry and make me manage it. She was right and I knew it. I looked at the porch boards. The worst part wasn't him leaving, she said. I need you to understand that, because it should have been, but it wasn't. She pulled the blanket tighter. I was resting in the bedroom. He thought I was asleep. He was in the kitchen on the phone with his sister. I wasn't trying to listen. I just heard my name. She stopped. Her voice when it came back was very even. The way a voice gets when someone has already cried about the thing so many times that the crying is done and now it's just the fact of it. He said he still loved me. He said he felt terrible about the whole thing. He said he knew what I'd been through. And then he said, she paused. He didn't recognize me anymore. That he kept waiting to feel the same way again and it just wasn't coming back. The porch went quiet. I heard the maple at the end of the driveway moving in the wind. A dog somewhere down the street. The small tap of Tessa's mug against her knee, because her hand had started to shake slightly. There were a lot of things I wanted to say. The kind of things you say when you're furious, and it's easier than being helpless. But Tessa did not need my anger performed at her. She had already survived the damage. She did not need my noise added on top of it. That's on him, I said. She made a short sound. Not a laugh. I mean it, Tessa? She finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but she looked more tired than sad. Like she had moved past the part where it felt like injustice and arrived at the part where it just felt true. Accuracy doesn't fix what it does to you, she said. When the person who was supposed to stay makes you feel like a problem they were trying to solve. I had no clean answer for that. I could tell her Colby was selfish. I could tell her he didn't deserve a minute of the space he still occupied in her head. Every bit of it might have been true. None of it would pull that sentence out of her. The one she'd heard through a wall in her own kitchen about herself. I set my thermos down. I'm not Colby, I said. She looked at me for a second. I know, she said quietly. That's the part that's hard. The air between us shifted in a way that was difficult to pretend wasn't happening. She looked away first, toward the street. But I had already seen it. The wanting and underneath it the fear of wanting. The part of her that had learned the hard way that kindness was not a guarantee. That people who said they would stay, sometimes said that before they understood what staying required. I stood up. Her shoulders went rigid. Where are you going? Inside. You're freezing. I'm fine. You've been sitting on a porch in Port Hope in November with a half-empty thermos. You're not fine. She looked at me with something that was either annoyance or relief. And what's inside? Heat. Whatever's not inspiring. I have a box of PC Blue menu pasta and I know how to use it. She stared at me for a moment. Then she stood up. You are so deeply unromantic, she said. I have a functional thermostat. That's not a selling point. It is in November. 15 minutes later she was sitting at my kitchen counter in Coburg, still wrapped in the blanket, watching me try to remember how long pasta was supposed to cook. She had taken her boots off at the door and was sitting sideways on the stool with her feet tucked up. "You're staring at the pot," she said. "I'm monitoring it. Watching it won't make it boil faster." "That's been studied by whom?" "Scientists." "Which ones? The pasta ones?" I looked over my shoulder. She had the smallest smile on her face. Not the practiced one she'd been showing people since she came home. The one with the careful edges. The actual one, which was slightly crooked and appeared without warning. Something in my chest settled the rest of the way. I made the pasta. It was not exceptional. She ate most of it while I stood on the other side of the counter, and we talked about nothing important. Finn's new job in Hamilton. Her mother's habit of rearranging Tessa's old books by color rather than subject. The fact that the Rogers Center had somehow still not fixed the roof situation. But then her bowl was nearly empty and she had gone quiet in a different way. Not the comfortable quiet from before. Her eyes moved to the dark window over the sink and caught her reflection, and she looked away fast, like she had been startled by something. I turned slightly, gave her a way out of whatever had just risen in her. She didn't take it. Instead, she set her fork down very carefully. She sat very still. "Can I show you something?" she said. The kitchen went quiet the way rooms do when something is about to matter. The radio was still going low, the old CBC evening program, and the burner was still warm under the pot. But the room felt different. I turned off the water I had been running, set the sponge down. "You don't have to show me anything," I said. "I know that." The answer came too fast. She had already had this argument with herself before I had a say in it. She was sitting at the counter with her bowl pushed to the side, the blanket slipped off one shoulder. My old hoodie, the Coburg hockey one she had borrowed off the hook by the door, hung past her wrists. She pulled the sleeve up slightly, then let it fall. "That's why I'm asking." I stayed where I was. "Tessa, don't say my name like that." "Like what?" "Like you're building me a ramp to back out." "I am building you a ramp to back out." The old flash came through her expression, annoyed, almost amused, clear-eyed. "I can see the ramp, Cal. I know where it is, okay?" She slid off the stool, stood up, and I understood then that she was scared in a way I had not seen from her before. Not embarrassed, scared. This was the woman who had once stood up in a meeting of 40 people in a Vancouver boardroom and calmly corrected a VP who had been wrong about Q3 projections. She did not scare easily, but she was scared now, standing under my kitchen light in a borrowed hoodie, with her hands pressed flat against the front of it. I looked at her face, and I kept looking there. "Colby saw me once after," she said. Her voice was almost steady. "He said it was okay. He said all the right things. Then he started changing in the bathroom. Started leaving the room when I got dressed. Like if he didn't see it directly, it wasn't something he had to have an opinion about." I kept my breathing even. The anger was there, but it was mine to manage, not hers. She lifted the hem of the hoodie just enough. "Write in the comments. Do you think Tessa was wrong to let Colby's reaction become the thing she measured herself by? Or is that the kind of wound that lives in you no matter how clearly you can see it for what it is? I will not tell you I handled it gracefully. I am not a man who is good at being trusted with the weight of moments like that one. I am a man who refinishes furniture in a garage in Coburg and drives an old F-150 and forgets to call people back. But I looked. Not with a doctor's remove. Not with the manufactured neutrality of someone trying to demonstrate that they were okay with it. I looked at her honestly, the way you look at someone you actually see, long enough to receive what she was giving me. Then I looked back at her face. She was watching my eyes, waiting. I heard her breathe. I did not rush. I knew that much. Quick comfort is just fear wearing a nicer jacket. I took one step closer. She held her ground. Another step. I stopped. "I do," I said. She looked at me like she had misheard something. "I do," I said again, quieter. "Cal, I'm not saying it because I feel sorry for you." Her mouth pressed together. "I'm not saying it because Colby was an idiot and now someone has to compensate. I'm not saying it because I want credit for being the good man in the story." I kept my voice even. "I'm saying it because it's true. Because I've known you for 11 years and this," I gestured carefully, meaning all of it, the kitchen, the night, the thing she had just trusted me with, "does not change what I know." A tear slid down one cheek and she wiped it away fast, like it had annoyed her. "You haven't seen all of it," she said. "I don't need an inventory to know who I'm looking at. That's not fair. What happened to you wasn't fair. What Colby said wasn't fair. You standing here in my kitchen thinking his fear gets to be the final word on your body. That's not fair either." Her face broke for half a second. She pulled it back. She was very good at pulling it back. I kept my voice low. "What you went through changed things. I am not going to stand here and pretend otherwise. But that," I paused, choosing the word slowly, "is not damage. It is not a warning. It does not make you less wanted. And it does not make you less of a woman. She made a sound I can't describe and put her hand over her mouth. I held out my hand, palm up, just that, a question. She looked at it for a long moment, then she took it. Her fingers were cold and she held on hard, the way people hold on when they're angry at themselves for needing anything at all. I pulled her in slowly, giving her every opportunity to stop me. New memory, I said quietly. She looked up. You showed me what you were most afraid of, I said. And I didn't go anywhere. She stepped into me then. Not dramatically. Tessa didn't do dramatic. She just pressed her forehead against my shoulder and the crying came. Not the loud kind. The kind that has been waiting for a safe place. I held her with both arms. Not carefully, not like she might break. Solidly. Like she was worth holding that way. There is a difference and I wanted her to feel it. She cried for a while. I didn't keep track. I just stood there in my kitchen in Coburg, with one hand between her shoulder blades and the radio still playing the CBC evening programming, feeling her breathe and shake and slowly come back from wherever Colby's voice had dragged her. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and she looked annoyed about it. I hate this, she said. I know, I don't cry in front of people. You cried in front of me. You're not people, you're. She stopped. You know what I mean. I do. She laughed despite herself and covered her face with both hands. Then she dropped them. I don't want to drive back tonight, then don't. She looked at me carefully. Cal, the spare room is made up, that's not. It's a spare room, Tessa. Nobody is asking you to make any decisions tonight. It's a room where nobody is going to ask you to be okay. She held my gaze for a long time. I need you to understand that I'm not saying this means I know. She exhaled slowly. Okay. I found her a spare toothbrush still in the packaging. I buy the multi-packs from Costco, which she made a brief comment about. And a clean towel from the hall closet. She slept with the door open a few inches. Not closed, not wide open. That seemed like exactly right. I stayed on the couch under the quilt my grandmother had made, staring at the ceiling long after the house went quiet. The thing about telling someone you want them when they are standing in the middle of their worst fear is that once you say it and mean it, you cannot unsay it. You cannot walk it back and claim it was only comfort. It wasn't only comfort. In the morning I woke up with a crick in my neck from the arm of the couch and one sock half off. For a few seconds I forgot why I wasn't in my bed. Then I heard the kettle in the kitchen. I sat up carefully. Tessa was standing at the counter in my hoodie with her hair unsettled and her reading glasses on, which she had apparently produced from somewhere, reading the label on my coffee beans with the expression of a food inspector reviewing a concerning report. These are from 2023, she said without looking up. They're fine. They have been in an unsealed bag. The clip was broken. You own a hardware store's worth of clamps and you couldn't find one to seal your coffee? I stood and stretched. Good morning. I'm serious about the coffee. I'll get new coffee. Today. Maybe today. She turned to look at me over her glasses. I will be monitoring this. I went to the kitchen and stood on the other side of the counter. For a second I could not say anything at all, because she was standing in my kitchen making fun of me. And after last night that felt like the first solid ground after a long stretch of thin ice. I made the coffee. She accepted it with a look that indicated it was passable under the circumstances. Halfway through her cup she set it down, turned it in a small circle on the counter. Do you remember what you said last night? She asked. Yes, all of it, yes. She kept her eyes on the mug. Did you mean it? I knew better than to be charming about this. Yes. Her eyes came up. That you want me? Yes, not just anything. Yes. She was quiet then. If I believe that and one day you look at me the way he did, her voice caught but she steadied it. I don't know what that does to me. I don't know if I have the rebuild in me a second time. I wanted to promise her I would never do that. I wanted to say I would never go quiet on her, never make her feel like a condition to be managed, never run the clock out in another room on a call. But I have enough sense to know that promises made in kitchens in the morning after a hard night are only as good as the evidence behind them. And I had no evidence yet, only intention. I can't promise I'll be perfect, I said. I can promise I won't lie to you. I can promise that if something changes for me, I'll tell you before you have to hear it through a wall. I can promise that I'm not waiting for you to become a previous version of yourself. I want this one, the one standing in my kitchen critiquing my grocery habits. She made a sound between a laugh and something else. Can we go slow? She asked. Slow is basically all I know how to do. The deck took you 3 weekends. It took 2.5, and it's a good deck. She smiled then, the real one, slightly crooked. So we went slow. She still stopped by the workshop, but now she stayed longer, sitting on the old stool by the bench with her second coffee, commenting on my work like she had been hired as a consultant. That joint is off by 2 millimeters. I said it wasn't. She said 2 millimeters added up. She was right, but I didn't say so. Some evenings I walked her back to Walton Street. Sometimes we talked about Colby. More often we didn't. We talked about Finn's new relationship, her mother's ongoing renovation projects that somehow never ended, my client who wanted a distressed finish but kept describing it as vintage but not old-looking, which meant he didn't know what he wanted. Slowly she stopped checking her reflection in windows like it might report something back about her. A month later I asked her on a proper date. Finn had told me in no uncertain terms what would happen to me if I didn't do something deliberate and soon. I showed up at her mother's door with flowers from the shop on King Street. She opened the door, saw the flowers and said, "You've been coached." Finn was very clear about the expectations. Did he threaten you? With specificity. She took the flowers, looked at them. Her expression shifted, something moving through it that she didn't entirely cover before she looked back up. "Thank you," she said quietly. She was wearing a dark burgundy top and her good coat and she looked like Tessa, which is the only way to say it accurately. Not the careful version, her. We went to a small Italian place on a side street in Coburg that had been there for 30 years and had the kind of low lighting that forgave everyone. Nobody there knew our history. Nobody looked at her like a story with an asterisk. She was just a woman on a date, rolling her eyes because I couldn't find our reservation under the right name. After dinner we walked along the waterfront. The lake in December is cold and dark and not particularly beautiful, but Tessa had never needed things to be beautiful to find them worth looking at. She walked beside me with her hands in her coat pockets. I kept mine in mine. Halfway down the path she stopped walking, took her hand out of her pocket, reached over and took mine. Her fingers laced through mine carefully at first, then more firmly. "I thought tonight was going to feel like too much," she said. I looked at her. "It didn't," she said. I stopped walking, she stopped too. I waited until she looked up at me and then I kissed her. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't a statement. It was just us standing on the Coburg waterfront in December with cold faces and warm hands, making something that was ours and not anyone else's. When we broke apart, she looked at me for a moment. "New memory," I said. "New memory," she said. After that we collected them. The first time she wore a fitted dress to Finn's birthday dinner because she wanted to. Not to prove she could, but because she wanted to. The first photo I took of her laughing in the workshop doorway. One hand on the frame, a look on her face that had nothing in it of the careful smile from the driveway. The first morning she stayed for breakfast and reorganized my spice drawer without asking, and then denied it was a reorganization, calling it a minor correction. Then Colby called. We were at her mother's place. I was fixing the bathroom towel bar that had been pulling from the wall for what her mother described as 2 years, and Tessa described as 4. Tessa was in the kitchen. I heard her go quiet. I came to the doorway. She was standing at the counter looking at her phone. Her face had gone still. I started to say I could give her a minute. She shook her head. The phone kept buzzing. She looked at it for another few seconds. Then she turned it face down on the counter. That was it, no speech. No final words she had been rehearsing. Just her hand choosing silence. She stood there for a moment with her palm flat on the back of the phone. Then she looked at me. "I don't want him to have today," she said. So we kept going. I finished the towel bar. Her mother made soup. We ate it at the kitchen table while it got dark outside and the news played low in the other room. And nobody asked Tessa anything she didn't want to answer. Tessa did not go back to being the person she was before. That was never what I wanted. She was changed, and some of that change was permanent. And some days were harder than others, and some mirrors still caught her at the wrong angle. But she laughed more than she had in October. She wanted things without apologizing for the wanting. She argued about hockey trades again, loudly, with confidence, in public. She let people see her. Not all of her, not all at once, but the real version. The one that included the years she'd been through and the woman she had become inside it. I loved her. Not the idea of her. Not a past version she would have had to perform for me, her. As she was. Stubborn and funny and sharp and tired in places and completely, entirely alive in all the ways that counted. People say something begins with a first kiss or a particular night or the moment you realize what you're feeling. Ours started before any of that. It started with a porch in November and a cup of lukewarm coffee from a scratched thermos. The night she stood in my kitchen and showed me the things she believed would send me away, and I stepped closer and told her the truth.